In the previous video, we discussed how AWS recommends not using your root user for day-to-day activities, but instead creating an administrative user and using that. So that's what we're going to do in this video. And to get started, we're going to click Services at the top, and then find Identity and Access Management. Now, users are attached to permissions, or the things that they're able to affect in AWS through the use of groups. So the first thing we're going to do before we create our user is create a group that they're going to be able to use once we create that user. Let's do that by clicking Groups here, and then Create New Group. We're going to call this group Administrators, because that is what we're going to assign the privileges to for this group. And then hit Next Step. Now, what we're looking at here are a list of managed policies that AWS provides. And these are policies that have already been put together that include multiple different permissions. For example, if you wanted someone to have only access to S3, then you could filter to S3 permissions, and so on. What we want to choose here, though, is administrator access, which means the user is going to have access to almost everything in this account. Next, we'll hit Next Step, and then Create Group. And that's it. That's all there was to it. So now we have a group that if we assign a user to, this user will be an administrator in this account. Now, very quickly, before we create our user, I do want to cover those managed policies just a little bit more. So let's click on Policies here. And if you'll recall, we assigned administrator access to the group that we just created. So let's look at that one first. You'll recall from the previous video that AWS uses JSON objects to determine what level of permission a principal has. And in this case, it's very simple. Because we're looking at administrator access, we have the effect of allow. And by the way, this can be allow or deny the action of everything to the resource of everything, which means we're in allowing this principal to perform any action on any resource. Let's take a look at another policy, for example. Let's find a Lambda policy, and let's go to AWS Lambda Full Access. In this case, it looks just a little bit different. So we still have the effect of allow, but this time we have the action for a few different CloudFormation actions and then some other random actions as well, including Identity and Access Management, Kinesis, Lambda, and so on, and then to the resource of everything, which means if you've been giving Lambda full access, then you can perform any of these actions on any resource. And with that being said, let's go ahead and create our first user. So we'll go to Users here on the left side of the page, and then Add User. For the username, I'm going to select my own name here. And then next, we can select the AWS access type that this user is going to have. So if you're going to want this user to be able to use the API, the CLI, or something like a Node SDK or something, then you'll want to give them programmatic access. And then similarly for the console, if you want them to be able to log into the AWS console, then you'll need to give them console access as well. Next, you can give them an auto-generated password, or you can set a custom password. We're going to leave it auto-generated so that we can see what the entire process looks like though. And then we will require a password reset the first time the user signs in. So next, let's click Permissions. And for the next step, we want to set permissions to our user, and we have three different options for how to do that. We can attach existing policies directly, which means we could find administrator access and apply it directly to the user. We could copy permissions from an existing user. So if we had another user with a similar permission setup, then we could simply copy that configuration over to our new user. But what AWS actually recommends as best practice is adding users to groups. And this is because it's just the best way to manage users' permissions by job functions. And you'll see here we already have a list of our groups, and there's the administrator group that we created earlier. So let's select that one and review. And here it's going to give us a quick summary of everything that we configured. So we'll just hit Create User. And that's all there is to it. So we've created our first user, and on this page you'll see that we have a unique sign-in link that we can provide to that user. We can also download their access key ID, secret access key, and password through a CSV, and I'll go ahead and do that now. And then finally, if you want to, you can send them email instructions as well, but we're going to skip that for now. So let's close this out. And there we go. There's our user mapped with a group of administrators. Let's click on the user and explore just a little bit. And what I'm looking for is security credentials here. So just so you know, once you create that access key and secret key, you can't generate that same key again. So you'll want to make sure that your user stores that somewhere secure. If you need to, you can always deactivate that key and create a new one. What I'm looking for here, though, is the console sign-in link. So let's grab that and use that to sign in. And you'll notice when you use the link, it automatically populates your account ID with the account ID from the sign-in link. Next is the IAM username. And then finally the password that was given to you when you generated this user. You'll notice the first thing it asks you to do is to create a new password, so we'll do that now. And that's all there is to it. So we've created and logged into our first IAM user. Just so you know, because we gave them administrator privileges, they will be able to do just about anything, including manage other users. The only thing administrators can't do is access your billing dashboard. You can give people permissions to access billing, but it doesn't come by default with the administrator managed resource. And that about wraps it up for users, so if that makes sense, then feel free to move on.